Guys, it is January 22nd, 2017. Gonna go ahead and answer today's Q&A from the thread I posted this afternoon, or it says 8 hours ago, so right around noon. First question was GDA use around workouts. Are you a fan? Yeah, if you have a pretty good grasp on how you react to the GDA, you know how it affects your blood sugar, you know that you're not going to go hypo. Are you kind of matching the use with intra-workout carbs, or assuming you're using them? I have experimented with this during fat loss phases. I might add a little extra GDA in there just for even better nutrient partitioning. During training, right after training, you're already pretty insulin sensitive compared to other times of the day. You know, GLUT4 translocation is going on. You have pretty high affinity for partitioning nutrients. So if you're going to use a GDA around then, I would just kind of pay attention to your pumps, maybe check your blood sugar, things like that. See if it's actually doing anything, or if you're really getting anything out of it in a time that you're already pretty insulin sensitive. So it's worth a shot. I have had success with some people. Other people that are already pretty insulin sensitive, I wouldn't even bother. Somebody that's perhaps using, let's say, growth hormone or peptides or anything like that, anything that's going to lessen insulin sensitivity, and they're trying to milk every little bit out of it they can during the day, sure, anytime you have carbs you could use one, so that might be something to consider. Someone else asks about metformin. And I'm not sure if they mean actually around the workout or just in general, but metformin around the workout I don't think would really make much of a difference, because I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand how metformin works. It doesn't necessarily acutely lower blood glucose like a lot of your over-the-counter GDAs do, just because it works a little bit different by lessening the release of glucose from the liver. That's one of the main functions of it. So it's not necessarily going to, if your blood sugar is 150, it's not necessarily going to take it and your blood sugar is going to drop. Now, one way that it does help with that is it can impact the absorption of glucose from food. So, and that's also one of those things where if people get a lot of GI distress from that, I feel that there's a link between those two things right there, that it's kind of messing with that absorption process. So that's one of the things, and it increases insulin sensitivity. So it's not necessarily something that I would use around your workout. I mean, you could. I don't really think it's going to make a huge difference though, if that's what somebody's asking. So on to the next one. That's some fun ones. Tabby or solid colored cats? Oh, geez. Well, my cats I have both. I'm kind of partial to solid colored just because I feel like they have a better personality, but I could be wrong. This is just from personal experience. But I'm gonna go with that. So, and why were you holding a dog in the picture with your cat leggings? So I had cat leggings yesterday. I don't know if anyone saw those. I'm sure a lot of people saw them, got a lot of likes on that photo, but I was actually holding a dog in the photo. That's a new dog that we just got. So he was running around the gym. He hangs out in the gym, so that's why. I know, it didn't really match very well. But let's see, what else do we have here? Another question from PMs this morning, personal messages I have. Okay, this is a really good one actually. Okay, so he asks about contest prep, and it says, could you discuss why getting off-season intake super high doesn't always translate into higher ending intake for prep, especially for women? He says, it's as if a lot of women think that they can build up this metabolic savings account, but quickly find that they are making withdrawals real quick during prep. So, for example, eating 400 carbs and 2,300 calories off season doesn't always mean you won't end up at 900 calories by the end of the prep. That is very true. So, yes, this happens all the time. this is metabolic adaptations. That's metabolic adaptations to a T, or there's that term metabolic damage. I'm not really going to say that's damage. This is just adaptations. The same way that the person adapted upwards in the off season. Maybe they ended the last prep at 900 calories, and that, or if it's a female, and then in the off season they were able to get over 2,000 or 2,500. You would look at 900 on paper and think, oh, no way, they're in big trouble, and then really they adapt right back up just fine. So yeah, this happens a lot. My body's like that. Does that pretty much every single prep. I've always adapted back just fine, if not better. So I would say it's definitely nothing to freak out about, if assuming it's in an acute situation. Like I always say, time is more so relevant than intensity as far as how hard you're dieting, because hard in a short term versus that same calorie deprivation and maybe possibly cardio in a long term, two different scenarios completely. And the amount of time that you were perhaps in a surplus before and what your strategy is after the show, all of that makes a huge difference in the recovery process. So that didn't directly answer the question, but it did more or less. Like I said, it is metabolic adaptations. It's slowing of just overall metabolic rate. It can be the thyroid. If you were to check blood work and thyroid function, it can be that. Leptin levels are changing. It's just a typical survival mechanism. So if you were really to look at things like leptin, for example, like I said, you're going to notice that it's a lot lower, and that's just natural. Other hormones are probably going to be lower as well. So all part of the natural, metabolic adaptation process. Again, nothing to worry about. Just take those other factors that I mentioned into consideration, and you should be all right. And then another one was, this was another message from today. Find it here. All right. Asks about, there it is. Asks about cardio in the off season for mini cuts, or just cardio in general. So yeah, from a health standpoint, I think it's a good idea. I do leave in just a little bit of cardio for most people. If we're really worried about cardiovascular health for that person, I might prioritize a little bit more. If their cardiovascular system's pretty healthy, might not be as much. Though I will say it really depends on the person's goals as far as muscle growth as well. So if we're talking about in an actual surplus, cardio is going to be pretty limited. If you're doing tons of cardio, you're wasting tons of calories, you're going to have to eat a lot more. And you're kind of just spinning in circles at that point. But I would say, yes, from a health standpoint, it is good. And from a just lung capacity standpoint, that's why I like HIIT too. Incorporating some HIIT cardio as your body weight goes up and you get maybe not quite as mobile. It's good to be able to have that conditioning to a high heart rate. So when you get in those high rep sets and intense sets, you're not just gassing out before you actually hit mechanical failure. So yes, that can be important. And cardio in a mini cut, sure, yeah, you could definitely do it. I would say it's going to totally depend on the mini cut. I would probably add in HIIT first if I could, if the person's able to do it pretty effectively, just because you're going to get the most bang for your buck. If the person's goal is to gain a good amount of muscle mass in the off season or spend a good amount of time in a surplus, you obviously don't want to be doing mini cuts forever. So make the most of it, get in a shorter period. Don't let those other metabolic adaptations occur that I just talked about. And yes, use it. I don't see anything wrong with that whatsoever. No different than using it in a contest prep, really. So let's see. I think those were the good questions that I got today. And I don't think there is any more for today. So yep, that is it. That's it this time, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will post up another thread probably maybe later this week, depending on how the week's going. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good night.